each of the panelists just briefly introduce themselves, describe a little bit about your background and the work that your firm does.
Yes, hi. I'll go first. Arshia Mahmoudi, principal of Arshia Architects in Los Angeles. We are a architectural firm specialized in high-end residential, luxury architecture, mainly. And our focus has really been to push the envelopes and boundaries of what architecture can do within the sort of realm of possibility with available technologies, and how we can really utilize what's at hand to make something new and different.
We are, as he said, interior design group. We're small. There's about 10 of us. We focus mainly on high-end residential, but we do some commercial work from time to time. And we love to travel, so this is something we're really passionate about talking about.
And so I'd love to start off with a quick icebreaker for both of you. Of all of the places that you've traveled, which country has had the most lasting impact on how you design today? And to piggyback off of that, are there any trade shows in those destinations or not that you prioritize attending?
I think it's a little bit hard to kind of pinpoint one specific place, but I would say one of the places that really had a big impact on how we design and what we do was certainly Greece, I would say. The island architecture of Greece, Santorini specifically. We were really surprised and wondered by how simple material and just the use of essentially one material could shape the entire architecture from interior to exterior to walking surfaces, and how beautiful and graceful this could be. With taking into effect, all kinds of considerations from energy efficiency, orientation towards, the sun and climate awareness. So I think that simplicity really had a very big impact on what we do in our design. Obviously, Italy is another destination which you can't go wrong. It's definitely has been the exporter of ideas and craftsmanship and everything on the forefront of design.
I would definitely echo Italy. I think Italy does an amazing job of blending so many materialities. If you want leather with metal, with wood, and all of it done beautifully together, Italy, they seem to cross boundaries between their materiality, which I really appreciate. We've done the Salone show in Italy, which I highly recommend. It spills into the entire city, which is magical. You just can't imagine how amazing if you haven't been. Has anybody here been to that show? Right? Okay, I have witnesses. But I feel that there's also something about Italy with the modern, which if you haven't seen his work, it is stunning and very modern, but also the very, very traditional, right? So I feel like they were doing marble first. So it's so amazing how you can go into a flat and it's hundreds of years old and dripping with molding, but color washed in an intense color, and the furniture is all modern. So the fact that they figure all that out so effortlessly, it allows us to cross the boundary, right? We don't have to be all traditional or all contemporary. I would have to pull in France because that was my first love in architecture when I was young. I think that is always going to be my personal heart moment is the French architecture. And they also have two shows back to back twice a year. They have Deco Off, which is in the city. So you're shaking your head. Yes, it's amazing. And then they go on into having the full-blown show, which is more similar to this. So for sourcing and we're always looking for new things. I'm pointing, this is my team up here, which I'm super happy about. So for us, it's about finding new things, and those two places are definitely top of list. But then Ireland, Scotland, I mean, the simplicity that happens, and you're sitting in the space going, why is this so amazing? And it's a cultural thing, just the people are making it cool, I think, and the history. So I could go on, but those are my top ones.
Amazing. Yeah, I'd love to personally echo Salone in Milan. It's really wonderful. You just see the entire city come to life and celebrate all things design, and you get access to these spaces that are just breathtakingly beautiful and almost frozen in time. So thank you both. I'd love to start off the conversation with a question about rituals. I mean, obviously kitchens and baths carry very strong cultural rituals around cooking, cleansing, gathering together. And I'm curious, how do some of those rituals shape your design decisions, especially when you're working with global materials and references?
Yeah, this is actually quite interesting because kitchen and bath are obviously this, the sort of the name bearer of this show. There's a reason I think this has this kind of importance. We're not, talking about bedroom or living room. Kitchen and bath specifically, I think they have a very significant cultural weight to them. The reason being, I think, in certain cultures, for example, in Scandinavia, the kitchen is the heart of the house. It's where people gather. It's the warmth. It's sort of, the centrality of where all the other spaces organize around. Same with the bathroom, like in Japanese culture, it's sort of a ritual. It's not something you jump in and jump out like we all did this morning. For efficiency, it's something, you take your time. It's a space for contemplation. And I think if we kind of import these concepts, not so much, think about like, the surface or the material or, hey, let's, import a Japanese tub, but more think about like what these spaces mean and how they came to be. I think this is sort of the importance of these two particular spaces for me in architecture and design.
Digging beneath the surface, if you will.
Yes, correct. I mean, just sort of having an understanding. I mean, obviously the surface plays a role. It's not, you can't really dismiss that. But I feel like, just sort of understanding why this shape or this came about through the course of hundreds or maybe thousands of years of evolution, and not, just something that was done particularly for efficiency and for speed.
I would say that the thing I see often is when you're in Europe particularly, or Japan, they're so health conscious. Their food, the way they prepare the food, the way the food is grown, sources of those things are very important. They protect it. And how they work in their kitchen and have their garden right outside, or their market shopping, there's a butcher shop and there's a place to get each different item that they're eating, and it's very sacred. It's important to them that they're getting the best. And then how they bring that in and with such care and love prepare it, and they have their family around and the long table that's adjoined to the kitchen, and it's very much a time of gathering. That's what they do. That's how they hang out, and they're not in a hurry. And I love that about most of Europe. That's very important that family time is happening. And so I find that my clients are actually embracing that as well. They're wanting a healthy lifestyle. They would rather use a steam oven than a microwave. And I feel that for us, it is our job to educate, and we need to be an advocate for our clients, to be out in places like this learning what is new, what is best, and how can we take the old, as you mentioned, the showers were quick this morning, but how can we take what we've learned from that healthy lifestyle and make it something we can actually do? And if I can heat up my meal in a steam oven instead of a microwave, that's a win. It took another 5 minutes, but that's something you can actually do. So I find same thing for the bath area. I think having a bidet, let's just go with that one, and having a bidet that is Americanized is beautiful thing. And we were in Toto and Kohler yesterday, and it's one unit. It's not the two that you see in Europe, and the one that's a little daunting and you're not really sure what to do with that. So I love that the cleanliness that they enjoy is becoming something that we all now enjoy. And who doesn't love a good heated seat, right?
Absolutely.
Amen. Are there specific countries that your clients reference when they are looking for more wellness-oriented design solutions?
Absolutely. We have a client right now that's actually on the government level trying to reform our foods here. And this is a long-term client of ours, and he had actually talked about moving to Europe because he could go over there and eat and drink wine and not feel bad. And so he flipped the script, which I was so appreciative of. Instead of him leaving, he decided to try to dig in and make it better here. So if you're interested in that, it's called Food Fight. Highly recommend that you get on that website and look what he's doing. He's starting in our schools because the food is, obviously something that's being targeted and marketed to our kids that aren't healthy. So if you think about people referencing mainly Europe, that is the home of, we're not going to genetically modify, we're not going to add sulfites, we're not, the things that are happening here that we're now all taking a step back and going, oh, maybe that's not best practices. So I would say mostly Europe.
Yeah, I think this is more, I wouldn't say we have that much of a reference, but something I wanted to kind of touch on and along the same lines is obviously the Instagram culture these days is, everybody's, swiping and flipping through images, and I see this a lot these days, and I'm sure you also do, that clients come to you with a set of images that they just saw, and again, like a lot more these days, these are AI generated or what have you, and they just see a look, and they want you to kind of replicate this, which I feel is I understand it from a client's perspective. Obviously, they saw something and they felt like a connection. But how do you kind of educate this client about what this means and where this came from, and how you can actually translate that into something that's locally viable, doable, environmentally sensitive? I was just thinking about this morning, and I said, I hear somebody says, let's do this wall out of stone, and look at this pattern. It's so cool. It's like random pattern. But maybe think about that and say, okay, when this was built traditionally, why was it in a random pattern? Because the stonemasons, had this certain tools, or because they interlock better this way. And there's kind of like a logic behind a lot of these things that, you can, maybe use that logic or understand that logic and bring that back here, but kind of have a modern take on it. Yeah, I was going to veer into other things, but I'll let you.
Well, that's a great segue into my next question. I did want to ask about education and what role designers should play in educating the client about, artisanal craftsmanship and maybe why it's worth the wait, when you are sourcing something from around the world.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's actually interesting because I was fact-checking something yesterday, and there's obviously a lot of stigma around importing and taking things around the globe. But matter of fact, I looked at transportation is only a small portion of the carbon impact or the energy impact that materials have. It's mostly about how this material is sourced, how it's made, and above everything else, how this material lasts. When we look at things that last a long time, this has a genuine value. Because if something could last 50 years and it has less maintenance, or is maintainable, I should say, versus something that you have to kind of keep changing over time, I think that has a much smaller environmental footprint. That's something that could have longevity. And it's also really interesting because I was thinking about like culture of cars, vehicles, which our firm is kind of really deeply interested in how vehicles are designed, and we try to kind of take that aesthetic into architecture. Certain cars, when you go and understand that, like, there's two different cultures about cars. One is you buy a car for your use, for your efficiency, and to get from A to B. And this car, very obviously loses value over time very quickly. But there's another car culture out there that kind of celebrates, quality and celebrates good design. You see older, more model Porsches selling for $1 million now. And that tells you something about, okay, this object has increased in value over time instead of losing its value because it was made well, it was designed well, it was thought about well. And I think these are things that kind of we can educate clients about in terms of how to import things.
I echo that completely. I also feel that it's a fine line, right? Because we're not anti-mass production. I have IKEA in my office, and it works beautifully. But at the same time, there's room and space for the real artisanship and the craftsmanship. And I think that's where my heart is. I do feel, the older I get, that the connection with the artist and the connection with the craftspeople and having the client understand that, if the client meets the stonemason and they pick it out together and they do some sampling together, now they have an understanding of the labor that's going into that material that's different than, we're having a debate right now. We're working on a large Gothic project. And the debate is, do we stick with real stone everywhere, because Gothic is all stone, or do we Disney it and go partially up with real and then switch to fake? And there's good reasons for both: structural, weight, cost, time. But, I was posing this. We had lunch together yesterday, and I was posing it to him, and his point was, okay, but the thing you're loving about that Gothic cathedral is as much the sound and the reverberation in that space. And the minute you switch from a real stone to something synthetic, you don't know what you're going to get, really, and it's certainly not going to be the real thing. And what if you went through all that effort and all that cost, and you're missing? You just missed. And I hate the idea of chancing that, right? Because none of us want to live in Disney. We want to live in authenticity. Well, most of us don't want to live in Disney. But I think it's my job, it's my team's job to find the craftspeople, celebrate them, and say what they're doing is old and beautiful and done that way for a reason and sustainable. If you use the real stone, it's not going anywhere, right? And I mean, we've had issues in the past using a foam on the exterior, and the birds came and pecked it and ruined it, right? So then we had to rip it all off, and it was a disaster. So there is something about honest materiality. His point yesterday was embrace the technology in the application of it. Use the cranes, use the technology, use the steel reinforcing so we don't need flying buttresses, right? So embrace that part. But when it comes to materiality, try to lend more to being truly authentic. And Taylor and I were working last week in Indiana. You don't have to go to Europe for this, right? It's here. And we were picking veneers for a Gulfstream jet. I'd never gotten to do that before. So cool. They get the top 1% of wood from around the world, and it's cut in these really, really thin strips, right? So we were literally flipping through trees, looking at the patterns and looking what was going on. And they spray it with alcohol water, which was fascinating, so you could really see what it would look like stained. It's amazing that they can take a tree and get that much square footage out of it by using a veneer. So it is being resourceful, right? They're putting on a poplar backing, which is readily available and super reproducible. So I don't think that we have to be all or nothing. I think that we can find ways to keep the honesty of the materials, but be super creative about it, which again, I think is what you have excelled at exceedingly.
Thank you. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Did you have anything to add?
No, I just, as far as, craftsmanship, this is kind of really interesting because there's something to be said about that. Like you said, something that's produced through artisanal craft and something that was made by hand and made by sort of direct connection of body and muscles to the material, it gets translated and embedded in that material, and you read that and that energy comes back to you. And it's not, I'm not talking sort of like abstract. This is, I think, very real. And again, like I'm obviously, if anybody sees our architecture, we're not dismissing technology or progress, but I think it's just sort of how do we make sure those things do not die, and really take care of those and make sure they're handed down through generations by creating a market for them. And maybe actually where we are in time lends itself to sort of this direct facility towards these artisans, as opposed to going through various chains of import middlemen or what have you, and you can maybe buy direct and source them directly. So to help those cultures really flourish and exist and not go away.
That was going to be my next question.
I read your mind.
Amazing. Makes my job easier. How do you go about seeking out these artisans who practice this generational craft, and how do you assess whether the workshops and the market that you're creating help sustain the continuity of that craft?
This is something that I feel I've gotten much more clarity and awareness on in the last 2 years, and I'm embarrassed to say I've been doing this a long time, and it took me this long to come full circle to really getting this more. I think we have been so hurried as designers and so wanting something new, right? Like how can we be different and how can we not repeat too many things, that I stopped really digging in with the artisans, really going to their shop, talking with them. Like, what are you working on? Like, where are your passions? How can I pull your family skills, your heritage, your creativity, and blend it into something that we're trying to do instead of requiring it to be something that already exists. I do think I was at Scotland at a conference, and they brought a lady in, and she had gone around Scotland gathering different artisans, and she made a map, and she handed out the map so that everybody could understand that these people are there and that you can use them, because a lot of times they're not master marketers, right? They're not necessarily here at a booth all the time. So there's a place in New York called The Future Perfect, and they rented this stunning, have you seen it? They rented this stunning, what is the building called? A black brownstone home, and they filled it full of all these different vendors, pottery, lighting, furniture, and it was a museum that you could buy things in. I mean, how cool is that? So taking many small craftspeople and combining that marketing, that exposure is really important. But I do think, and the other thing they mentioned there was, we as designers, we get to express to our clients where things come from. And it is our responsibility to ask. So I was just at the Baldwin booth this morning and asked, where's it being made? Oh, it's being made in Mexico, south of Arizona. That's great to know. We've been in business 80 years. It's a legacy company. That's a big deal. And asking those questions and then telling your client, the reason I am a proponent of this doorknob instead of that doorknob is where it came from, and the technology and the care, like you said, behind it. But they took it so far at this conference I was at to say, get a map, and every time your client sources something, put a little dot as to where that came from, and make them hyper aware of what is being put in their home. And if it is all import, if you are buying your linen from anywhere but Belgium, you're missing out. You know, there's an authenticity. If you're in Scotland and you're buying cashmere from China, you kind of missed. So there's a authenticity in that respect as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. I saw a YouTube video. Maybe some people have seen it here as well. There's a Japanese master woodworker or craftsman that is building a American-style home, but with Japanese sort of artisanal craft and joinery. And I encourage everybody, I mean, you can easily find this. And you could see like how the thinking is just different and how he puts this house together, even though the end result looks like, an American style home. But just how this, I'm just thinking of talking about like importing the concept of how you could do something differently. This is something that was developed in a different culture for thousands of years. He's using that to redefine how you can build a house, and it's very fascinating. This particular video, and many examples like that of how you can actually use something and still be authentic, but also be conscious about environmental impacts or attention to craftsmanship and to sort of traditions. So yeah, I think.
Do you find that clients are becoming more interested in where these pieces are coming from?
Well, I think it's the more I talk about it, the more they notice it. right? So the more that I say, this craft is important because, or I saw this at this amazing place and I met the gentleman that did it, and the more that I bring a story to it, and an explanation, and it's not just a thing that showed up one day and it had meaning, there was purpose in the selection, then the best, this is when you know you won, is when they walk through at the end and you hear them giving someone else a tour of their own home and they're repeating all those things. You know, this came from here, and George made that for me, and I went to the metal shop and we picked out this hardware together, and the client has like a connection with the people. I mean, let's face it, the thing that lasts the longest is the connection with the people. So let's don't miss that. And I'm guilty. I'm really bad about running through an antique shop, especially if there's a lot of people and I'm thinking I'm going to miss something around the corner. So I'll start buzzing through really fast and not stop to say, where did that come from? What is the history of that piece? What is the origin? Where did you get it? And that way, understanding what I'm looking at instead of just, wow, that's a really cool old sailboat that's going to look great on a mantle. I'll take it. You know, that there's a pause. There's a moment to stop and say, what makes this old or cool or new? You know what I'm saying? Like
Absolutely.
The history.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, very, very important and interesting point, I think, about what you're saying regarding the clients. Because this, at the end of the day, it's a narrative, you know, architecture and interior design, it's storytelling. So this becomes part of that narrative, not just, you know, walking through the space, but sort of the history of what this house means and where the origins are. Interestingly enough, I'm sure you know this better than anybody else, a lot of publications these days, they're not interested in, you know, what something looks like. They want to know the story. And, you know, repeatedly, like, I've had projects or, you know, publications that the project is great, but, you know, the client is, you know, wants to sell the house, or he's there to flip the house or whatever. And, you know, they're not interested because they know people are kind of yearning for the story behind something. You know, like I was mentioning again about car culture, there's, you know, I visited when I was in Milan. There was an exhibition or something with Lamborghini, and they were like explaining how they brought an artisan that was stitching the steering wheel and the seats, and you could see that this guy actually with hand is sort of stitching the leather together. And it looks like a machine, but it's actually a person did that.
Wow.
So, I mean, these are all like stories, and that's part of, something that's a narrative of that car and of that brand. And that's why it has a certain value and price and longevity.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we review projects for the publication, I mean, we're looking for interiors with art and design and materials and craftsmanship that's in conversation with one another, and not just a jumble of items in a room. They kind of need to speak to one another. So absolutely, yeah.
So this is an interesting thing that just happened. I sat in, my bank actually hosted a luncheon, and it was a curator, an art curator, and she is all about collections, including cars, watches, purses, art, and she started talking about how you can reframe that purchase as an investment. And she was saying, if you have someone guide you appropriately, your art is an investment. It will appreciate, especially especially modern art, can skyrocket overnight. And instead of, she said, nobody's framing their stocks and bonds, but you could have your cake and eat it too. You can buy this incredible piece of art that's going to appreciate and value and enjoy it. So there's ways that we get to educate people to think about it differently.
Absolutely.
Best of both worlds. So this is a topic that I would love to continue talking about, but we are approaching time. So I would love to turn it over to the audience for a quick Q&A session. Does anyone in the audience have a question for the panelists? Maybe someone in the audience has a favorite trade show or a fair around the world that they travel to and would love to talk about. Besides KBIS, of course. Well, if we don't have any questions, yeah, we're here. We made it. Thanks to both of you so much for being here and talking about cultural crossroads. And I hope all of you have a great rest of show. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.